Easthampton's water infrastructure is at risk of failure in the next 20 years, and the community is not alone in its challenges. Springfield and Pittsfield, among other communities, are grappling with how to keep water and sewer flowing safely to and from homes and businesses. Easthampton Department of Public Works Director Joseph Pipczynski discussed how the system got to this point and what's being done to address the issues.
We've known for a long time, at least the public works officials known for a long time, that our infrastructure is aging. We've got additional regulations thrust upon us by the regulatory agencies. And with these new stormwater regulations coming along, we know there's only so much money in the pot. So we have to figure out which ones of the projects, whether it's a water project or a wastewater project or a sewer line or a stormwater, which project is the most important to go forward with first. So we've decided to contract with some consulting engineers, and they looked at all three systems, the deficiencies.
You're talking about water, sewer, and stormwater when you say three systems,
yes,
right?
Yes, water, sewer, and stormwater. Yeah. And they look at all three systems and look where the deficiencies are, and also looking forward as to what the regulations, they feel the regulations are going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, and put those in an order of priority for us, and they can recommend to us, we think you should be fixing this one first.
Yeah, and when you look at the Water Resource Management Plan, I know this is something you've been holding public hearings on, and you're sort of in the process of narrowing it down to put forth a final plan. But in terms of what's online, the draft plan you have right now has 8 objectives. Among them is one is to collect data about the infrastructure. Have town records been kept poorly, or why is it that you want to collect that information?
Well, it's not that they've been kept poorly. They've been kept in several different places. They certainly aren't digitized. So what this is going to do is going to help us considerably, because we will have them in one concise place in digital format where our engineer can pull them out, our water guys can pull them out and have them right with them, you know, in a digital format.
What do we know about the demands on the water? We're talking about drinking water, but also, you know, sewer, the sewer water in town. What do you know about the demands currently? Is the system tapped out? Is it adequate to meet the needs of the 16 or so thousand residents in Easthampton?
Our wastewater treatment plant is certainly capable of handling additional capacity. That's not what we're concerned about. We're concerned about additional regulations that come along, say like nitrogen removal. And with the plant being built in the 50s and upgraded in the 70s and even upgraded in the 90s, nitrogen removal is just one of the things that was never even thought of.
And so that's a new permitting regulation from, is that federal or state that requires that, the EPA or the state?
It's a federal regulation, but it's enforced by the Massachusetts DEP.
And certainly Easthampton isn't the only community that needs to meet these regulations. Communities throughout Western Mass are looking at this. But 2014 was the last time the permit was looked at, right?
That's correct. The last wastewater permit we got was in 2014. They told us that the new ones were coming out soon, and we expect to see the new ones any day, you know, relatively soon. And our engineers, consulting engineers, they kind of have a heads up and know what we're looking at. They know what EPA, they've been going in speaking with individuals from EPA, so they know what we're could be looking at in the future. They know what regulations are going to change and how that's going to affect us.
And when you look at these new standards, these new permitting standards, why is it that the federal government is worried about this increased nitrogen? What's the impact on the community if it's not removed?
Well, nitrogen is a product of fertilizers and things like that. And in the receiving water, like the Connecticut River, it can have a detrimental effect on fish and on wildlife. There's things that we didn't know that 30, 40 years ago that we know today. So that's why these regulations are, you know, coming along today and haven't been around for a while.
And when you look at the drinking water, which I think is probably first and foremost on people's mind, clean, healthy, accessible drinking water, there are 3 different water sources that the community pulls from, right?
Yes, we have our Hendrick Street well field, our Nonotuck Park well field, and our Brook Street well field. All underground water. We have no surface water, which is a a big plus for the city of Easthampton. Surface water brings a whole different set of rules and regulations that you have to abide by.
But when you're thinking about planning, right, you know the population, and certainly Western Massachusetts hasn't seen any sort of, or doesn't expect any sort of huge influx in residents. But are you also looking at development and maybe what impact that might have on the use of drinking water in the community?
Again, we have plenty of capacity with our drinking water. We have the capacity to pump about 6 million gallons a day, and we're probably pumping maybe 2 million gallons a day. It's not so much the capacity, it's protecting it and make sure that we have it. As a lot of people know, back in the 80s, we had the problem with the TCE in one of the aquifers, and in the Barnes Aquifer, and we had to put a treatment plant in that at the time cost $2 million. We're still running that plant, but we don't want we don't want something like that to happen again.
What about the impact, if there's any, that the individual systems, when you look at water, wastewater, and stormwater, the impact that those three systems have on each other? Are they interrelated in any way?
Well, yeah, they are. Because if you're not watching what you're doing with your wastewater, you could contaminate your water. So yeah, they are. The stormwater, not so much on the water end of it, but you're damaging your receiving bodies of water if you're not careful what you're allowing to go through the storm drain and eventually empty into the receiving bodies.
And I know that Springfield has struggled at times with excess rainwater events that then impact the stormwater and push that effluent out into the river, or leaks in the system. How aware is Easthampton of those types of challenges that you might be having, the cross-contamination issue that Springfield's contending with?
Well, we do have infiltration issues in our sewer lines.
That's commonly I&I talked about, right?
And that's a very common occurrence. One thing we don't have is combined sewers in the storm, which is a good thing. But when we get heavy rains, yes, we will get triple the amount of wastewater coming through our plant. And what happens then is that the effluent isn't treated. It just passes right through the plant, right into the Connecticut River, and that's a problem. And that's why this plan is going to help us identify where those inflow problems are, where so that we can maybe reline a pipe or relay a pipe or put a new pipe in, something that we can reduce that infiltration.
And so now you'll be developing this 5-year plan to move forward. And I know there are lots of variables and you're still looking at cost. But are we talking in double-digit millions? What's the ballpark figure?
It will be double-digit millions. It absolutely will. This is not going to be inexpensive proposition at all. This is going to be expensive.
So unlikely that raising water rates would cover that, right? So taxes maybe need to be increased with this?
Easthampton is an enterprise. The water and sewer is an enterprise system. So any funds that are used out of the enterprise system has to come from rates. So at this point, there's no discussion that anything's coming from taxation. It most likely will have to come from rates. So rates will have to be adjusted accordingly.
So we'll keep tabs on that. I appreciate you coming in today to talk to us. Thanks so much.